Well, good afternoon. It is Friday afternoon. It is our Friday Gracecast. I'm hoping that the lighting and the sound quality and the picture's a little better today than it has been. I did um, purchase a camera for the my computer. The Unfortunately, the my computer is not responding to the camera. It does have all the specifications. The camera meets my computer. They all have the proper specifications, but for whatever reason, haven't been able to get the camera to work. So, still working on that. And Lord willing, next time I come on here, you'll be looking at a much clearer picture, and that'll those details will all be worked out. I was really hoping that was going to be worked out today. But unfortunately, it wasn't. Um, of course, this little camera I bought just says plug and play. You just plug it in, it's just supposed to just automatically start working. And then if it doesn't, it has some easy steps to follow and to get it working. And none of those steps worked. I had my wife try to help me out, and she wasn't able to get it working either. Unfortunately, I have an old computer, and I like it that way. Um, I just like my computer. I've been using it for a decade now, and I'm very used to it. So, um, but Lord willing, even if I have to get an older camera, we will get this picture quality improved one way or another. With all that being said, I didn't come on last week. I was out of town. I did put together a video, and I after reviewing it, I didn't put it on last Friday night. Unfortunately, I put it together at the house I was staying at, and I was talking with such a low tone, trying not to be heard in the next room where I was at, and it was just terrible. So I ended up deleting it. So I apologize for not staying true to being on every Friday, as I said that I would. Well, this week I've got just a few things I wanted to talk about. Actually, just a couple, because one of them's going to take the majority of the time. But before I get to that, I want to just stick with this topic I've brought up a couple times. This topic of just this mass, this hysteria, this confusion that's over our land. This spirit of delusion that is just so pervasive in our thinking. There's just and I do not see any turnaround to this at all. And I've been talking about our inability to exercise logic and reason anymore. And we've been talking about here at Grace Community Church for years, in terms of the war against God with gay marriage and transgenderism, and just in the last few years, seeing this gender confusion. And and if you've been following the news just recently, we saw the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson, and she was asked this question about what's a woman, and she said that she couldn't answer what a woman was because she wasn't a medical doctor. And that was kind of like the ongoing joke, meme. There was all kinds of, on social media. You saw those memes going around. You can't answer basic questions about anything. About what's a car because you're not a mechanic. You can't answer. Basic questions in day-to-day life because you're not a specialist in these areas. And it was just all these jokes came out of that. Just this past week, some of you may have seen, there was this congressional hearing, and they had this abortion advocate, and she was asked if men can get pregnant and have abortions, and she was saying, and she said yes. Well, one of the Republican uh, Congress people, when I say Congress people, because I don't know if it was a senator or congressman, or I don't know if it was or what the person's title was. Um, I read the article. I can't remember. I don't know who it was. I should have wrote it down. But the person asked, well, what's what defines a woman then? So um, exactly. Who do you say a woman is? Um, and her answer is anyone can say that they're a woman. So in stark contrast to, 2-3 months ago, Ketanji Brown Jackson says that you need to be a medical doctor to define what a woman is. This woman, in a similar setting, before our elected officials, this person says that anyone could say that they're a woman. Anyone could go in there and say that they're a woman, and anyone could say that they're a man, and that's where we're at. And 2 days ago, I was reading an article about these kayakers that were kayaking, and they found a skull. And I saw this little headline. I thought it was going to be some sort of treacherous situation where they came upon a campsite, something had happened. And, well, it was what that wasn't the case at all. It was a skull from 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, and they said of a male that had died of blunt force trauma. Well, immediately, I thought to myself, well, here we are, no hesitation. They identified this person as a male. No hesitation. They identified the person as a male. So here we are in this land of confusion. What's a woman? I can't say because I'm not a doctor. Who do you say a woman is? Anyone could be a woman. And just as I have, when I've had these debates with different people who've tried maintaining that we can't readily identify who a male or female is, I've said, you know what? As we always have, when there's a baby born, there's never any debate when a doctor is standing with a mother and they're holding a newborn. They're not sitting there going, you know what? I can't wait to find out what this child decides to identify as. What they do is they say, you know, uh, Mrs. So and so, or you know, your your daughter is healthy, or or to the husband, or or the father, maybe they're not married, but there's never any confusion there. Your daughter, your son, there's never any confusion. When they find the skull of somebody who's been dug up in an archaeological dig, they found this person who is out there along this riverbed. After some, research, they can identify this is a female, this is a male. They don't say, if we only knew the family and friends of this person, we could have known what they identified as. They know. So it's just frustrating days that we're living in, and that are this scientific community that is supposed to be guiding and leading us uh, in these types of areas objectively, where we can all agree. Where just a few years ago we could all agree on these types of things, whether you're in the faith community or not. Uh, Now they have kowtowed to this buffoonery, and they're giving into this. So I wanted to share that. Um, the other thing I wanted to talk about today, and what I want to spend the majority of our time on, is last Sunday here at Grace Community Church, we looked at the rebirth of Israel, because on Saturday, May 14th, it was the anniversary of the rebirth of Israel. May 14th, 1948. Israel had been out of her land in captivity for over a couple thousand years, and and been reestablished as a nation, had declared herself a nation, and had been affirmed as a nation, and probably thereafter went to war, but I'm not going to get sidetracked on that. But this is the only nation in the history of the world that had gone out of the land that they had been in, and had been dispersed and vacated the land, and had come back into the land, rehabited the land, redeclared themselves a nation, and become a nation again. It's the only time it's ever happened. And it's completely and totally consistent with scripture, because from the opening verses of Genesis, when you go back to 12 and chapter 17, when God is talking to Abraham and declaring to Abraham that he's going to become a great nation. Great nation is going to come from him. He tells him that this land that he's going to go in and inhabit, the land of Canaan, which was already inhabited by a bunch of other um, people groups at that time. It was going to be an everlasting possession. So, in fact, I'll just read you one verse here for time's sake. In Genesis 17, verse 8 says, "I will give to you and to your descendants." So at this point, Abraham, it's just Abraham. In fact, his name wasn't even Abraham, he's Abram at this time. Actually, I take that back just a few verses before I change his name to Abraham. But there is no descendants. There's no descendants. So this is assuming that there were going to be descendants. "I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." So this was a promise to Abraham that he had to take hold of by faith. And I don't want to get sidetracked there, because that's not what we're talking about. So this is one bookend of what I wanted to share. And it's just, I could spend 30 hours right now just talking about that easily. And it's an amazing, miraculous event. I mean, you could be a atheist and just taking the this promise here that we have on a historical manuscript that was made to some guy back in history by some, it was written down, that, and we see that there was this people group, the Israelites, that existed historically, and we know historically they were out of their land, and then they were reestablished back in their land, 1948. That alone is just absolutely amazing. But since we as believers know that these are God's chosen people, and that God still has a miraculous plan for them, and that they're going to be continually, there's a continual plan for them. It's just absolutely incredible. But that's not what I wanted to talk about this today. What I want to talk about is Babylon, because Babylon is also another location that very similar to Israel. When you think of Babylon, you think of history, somewhere that existed, that has history, but it's kind of on the other end of the spectrum. It's kind of it has a whole nother kind of history. It's you got Israel, God's chosen people there, and then you got Babylon. You got all this negative connotation that comes with it. And you think about in Genesis, you think about you first of all, you think about Old Testament Babylon, and then you think about what we see in Revelation about Babylon, and there's all this speculation about what's going to be Babylon in Revelation. And when I preach through there, you get to those passages of talking about the location, the world empire. There's all this speculation. Is it going to be a rebuilt Babylon? Is it going to be Rome? There's all this speculation. Is it going to be New York? There's all this speculation. There's good arguments for all these. It's going to be the United States. I mean, there's just there's these different arguments. Well, one of the ones that was, when I first heard it, it was, talking about a rebuilt Babylon itself. It's hard to think about that because we saw what just took place the last 2 decades. 2 decades. Going back into the last. I can't remember when things started in Iraq, the Iraq War. Last 3 decades, I guess. Things have been going on. In Iraq. I mean, I think Iraq's just had ongoing problems there, and they've just had ongoing troubles in Iraq, and because you had the first Gulf War, and we got rid of Saddam Hussein, and so I mean, there's been ongoing troubles in Iraq, and it's a decimated country. So they're talking about rebuilding Iraq, and there's, there as a nation, it's just needing to be rebuilt. We tried putting in schools and tried to help rebuild some of the infrastructure, and we're trying to do that. We tried doing that over in some extent in Afghanistan, and because of the war there. But trying to imagine the glamour and the wealth and the power that Babylon would have to be this world power, it's just hard to imagine. But until you think about Israel just rose from the ashes just since 1948. And I read an article, and I wanted to share this with you, and I've just highlighted a few things. It's going to take a few minutes to go through these, because this is something we need to think about. And the reason we need to be thinking about these things is because these things are all happening right now in our time. And if these things are happening in our time, um, we need to be ready every day for the Lord's return, and we need to be busy about our Father's business. And what I have seen as a Christian, what I've seen as a pastor, last last couple of years is there are people much less ready today than they were 2 years ago. People have gotten complacent. People are not at church. People are not busy about their Father's business. Um, it, you would think the last couple of years people would be shaken and ready to go, but I think people got it's like people got locked in for a couple of years and they just want to let their hair down. They want to get out. They want to do other things. They want to relax for a while and then come back. But we don't know if we're going to get the opportunity. We don't know if we have the time. And we don't know if that's what the Lord has in store for us. The Lord could return today. We always say that. And because we always say that, people get used to hearing that and we get complacent with that. It's like a dam that has a little bit of a leak in it. And you know that dam at some point might be breaking and wiping out wherever you're at. So and you always need to be ready for when things are going to start getting ready to go. But you're always hearing that, and you hear it so frequently, and nothing's happened for so long that eventually you start thinking things are always going to kind of be on the alert, but always also be okay. But we have to understand things aren't always okay because things are changing right now. Things are really changing. And that's what I want to show you. And if you've been paying attention to what's going on around us, and that's the reason for this information I'm sharing with you, is things are changing rapidly. And we need to be ready for our Lord's return. And we need to be sharing what's going on with other people. We need to be sharing the hope that we have. So I've highlighted, instead of reading this whole article, it's from Joel Rosenberg. It's from February, so it's a few months old, but I've been listening to different things about Babylon, different podcasts, and reading some stuff on Babylon. And I just wanted to share a few highlighted excerpts from this article. He said, in 2006, I wrote my first nonfiction book, Epicenter, in which I explained that according to Bible prophecy, the ancient and long forgotten city of Babylon will one day be literally rebuilt. I also explained the once so powerful nation of Babylon, the country we now call Iraq, will one day rise to become the most wealthy and powerful nation in the world, according to the Old Testament and New Testament prophets and apostles. Few believed me at the time, fewer still cared. I should acknowledge up front that those who reject the teachings of the Bible understandably have a difficult time imagining a season of peace and prosperity emerging in Iraq. They certainly have long had a difficult time imagining the rebuilding of the ancient Iraqi city of Babylon, at least on the scale described in the Left Behind novels about the end times written by evangelicals Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins, or any of my novels or nonfiction books. Kevin Phillips, the best-selling author and former Republican strategist, was one such skeptic. Quote, evil Babylon, the antithesis of Jerusalem, the good city, prompted in its own literature in the 1990s, and LaHaye's tens of millions of readers praised his series as making the Bible and its supposed predictions come alive, sniped Phillips in his own 2006 book, American Theocracy, in which he mocked prophecy believers who accept the biblical view that Babylon will one day actually be rebuilt, quote, on its ancient ruins. I certainly understand such views, but I completely disagree with them. Slowly but surely, we are seeing biblical prophecies regarding Babylon come to pass. True, neither the city nor the country is what it will one day be. Nevertheless, what fascinates me is that top Iraqi officials are determined to rebuild both, even though, as Muslims, they don't believe in the Bible or know much about the prophecies it contains. War, terrorist insurgencies, ISIS, genocide, crumbling infrastructure, high poverty, and these are just a few of the nation's myriads of troubles. No wonder so many Iraqis fled to other Arab countries, to Europe, and even the United States if they could. If this weren't bad enough, record low oil prices in recent years, as low as $20 a barrel in 2020, severely hampered any chance at a true and lasting recovery. Quote, over the last decade, oil revenues have accounted for more than 99% of Iraq's exports, 85% of the government's budget, and 42% of the gross domestic product, notes the World Bank. So terribly low oil revenues, along with COVID-related lockdowns and travel restrictions, flatlined economic growth and caused unemployment to spike. Suddenly, however, we are seeing a change in the wind, yet few people have noticed. With the war and insurgencies finally finished and the ISIS caliphate destroyed, Iraq is finally turning itself around. With 148 million barrels of proven oil reserves, Iraq is now the fifth largest producer of oil in the world. And oil prices are now skyrocketing, hitting $90 a barrel, and this is February, a record since 2014. Should the trend continue and security continue to improve, Iraq will be awash with petrodollars. Growth will surge, unemployment will plummet, and Iraq will become vastly more attractive for investors and even for tourists. Now, Iraqi officials are hoping to get back to the ambitious construction investment plans they were hoping to pursue after the country was liberated from Saddam Hussein in the spring of 2003, and rebuilding Babylon is one of their most intriguing priorities. Once the wealthiest and most powerful cities in the world, indeed a wonder of the ancient world, the Babylon's empire was defeated by the Persian monarch Cyrus the Great in 538 BC. Along the way, Middle East trade routes shifted, and Babylon in its glorious history was abandoned and forgotten back in the late 70s and 80s. Now think about this. This is all occurring in our lifetime. Back in the 70s and early 80s, however, Saddam Hussein ordered his archaeologists and engineers to begin excavating and rebuilding the city once home to the much feared king Nebuchadnezzar. During the 8-year-long war between Iraq and Iran, however, all such work came to a halt. Since the liberation of Iraq in 2003, however, a great deal has happened. In April 2009, I reported that the government of Iraq is moving forward with plans to protect the archaeological remains of the ancient city of Babylon in preparation for building a modern city of Babylon. The project, originally started by late Saddam Hussein, is aimed eventually at attracting scores of cultural tourists from all over the world to see the glories of Mesopotamia's most famous city. What's more, the Obama administration is contributing $700,000 towards the future Babylon project through the State Department budget. This is in April 2009. The Babylon project is Iraq's biggest and most ambitious, by far, a reflection of the ancient city's fame and resonance in Iraq's modern political and cultural heritage, the Times reported, noting that the State Department has announced a $2 million grant to begin work to preserve the site's most impressive surviving ruins. They include the foundation of the Ishtar Gate, built in the 6th century BC by Nebuchadnezzar's father, and adorned with brick reliefs of the Babylonian gods Marduk and Adad. By July 2019, so much progress had been made that Babylon was named by a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Last fall, the Babylon International Festival was held again for the first time in 2 decades. The goal: to relaunch art, culture, and even the economy of Iraq by making Babylon a showcase of a new Iraq, a must-see tourist attraction for visitors from all over the world, said one participant. It was even featured in February 2021 on NPR about the state of tourism in Babylon, and there's a little write-up here on that as well. So on one hand, we have the resurrection of Israel, and on the other hand, we have the resurrection, it appears, of Babylon. These are things we have to take notice of. Our media outlets don't see the significance in things like this. Unfortunately, many churches don't recognize the significance of this. Many churches don't recognize the significance of Israel alone. So that's why I'm bringing this to you. And we need to be aware of the time that we're in, the days that we're in. That's why I share this with you today. These things weren't taking place in the 1800s. These things weren't taking place in the 1700s. These things are taking place in our generation. Please bear that in mind. Well, it is Friday. I pray that you're going to find yourself, I know those people that are parts of different churches listening to this. I pray you're going to find yourself your way to church on this weekend, and please make that a priority. Worshiping the Lord, it's not about supporting your local church. It's about being a part of worshiping the Lord first and foremost, giving him reverence and worship, setting that time aside for him, trusting him that you can carve out that time, and being a part of a church family. I know it's hard. Sometimes to trust that we can give that time, trust that we can give those funds, trust that we can make those sacrifices to serve during the week, whatever it is. But please trust the Lord, and right now just commit to being in your church this week. Well, you have a blessed day, and if we can serve you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. God bless you.